got one verse for you today. Some of you may know this. The Lord's led me to preach what I'm calling straight through the Bible. I started it a couple years ago. I hope to finish it in 2030. I do take breaks from time to time, but it's been pretty straight. Anyway, we're in the book of Ecclesiastes. This is not for this week's sermon, it's actually for next week's. I've been doing research ahead. Oh my goodness. And I ran across this verse that just sticks out like a sore thumb. And especially as the late edge of the boomers, this doesn't seem to be how we're processing life right now. Uh, do not say, why were the old days better than these? For it is not wise to ask such questions. Uh, Let me give you some thoughts on this from my research in Ecclesiastes. Uh, Ecclesiastes uh, seems to show the teacher aging, King Solomon aging, as you go from chapter 1 to chapter 12. And it breaks down into a few sections. This is the last section where I think King Solomon is his oldest at this point. A lot of the verses around this talk about it's better to be in the house of mourning than in the house of partying. Uh, and when in my younger days when I read that, I'm like, what in the world is he talking about? And I tried to, grok it, and I'm like, I guess, yeah, but it's more fun, and yeah, going to weddings, and I love going to weddings. It's fun. Um, I'm so glad for the young folks that are getting married and starting their lives that way. I think it's super. However, as you sit there or as you take it all in, you start thinking about your own wedding and all those days, and then you start thinking about the people that were at your wedding that aren't on this earth anymore, and you start thinking about those early days and how they won't be again, and it's not as much fun to go to a wedding. You go to a funeral, and you look around at your peers, and as we're looking at the deceased in the casket, we start to realize, in a few years that could be me. And you look around at your peers, and we all kind of know that, right? We know that, and we're facing it together, and uh, there's a camaraderie there and a wisdom there that's. I almost go away from funerals feeling better than going to weddings in some ways. So this is the frame of mind that Solomon's in when he generates this thought for us. Why were the old days better than these? Do not say that, for it's not wise to ask such questions. So I start thinking back on my own old days, and I remember the Vietnam War being on. I remember uh, my mom's cousin getting called up and going off to the war. And the Vietnam War was a shooting war, unlike our current one, which is calmed way down. Um, we weren't talking about just 13 service people being killed. Uh, Frankly, I remember the Gulf War and the news on the television, right, where they would say, "Here's the guys in our area that have been killed or injured," and all of that. Um, we still didn't have vaccines for some childhood diseases. I still remember guys getting sick with stuff, right, that don't even exist anymore. I think the music was better in our days. Come on. Um, Back in the 60s and 70s, we had some boss music. Um, but looking back, there it was uneven. It was an uneven time, and guess what? It's still an uneven time, right? Um, Objectively, was it really better? The music was better. Okay. um, I'm fascinated though. He says, "For it is not wise to ask these things, to ask such questions." Um, and I got two thoughts on that. The first is we can't objectively come up with any kind of answer. One, were the old days actually better than the ones that we live in, we have no idea. We were kids back then. We didn't really know what was going on. It was more about bicycles and basketball and school projects than it was about the bigger things of life. We have no way to evaluate that. Um, we can say our lives seemed better in the old days, maybe. We were still kids with bedtimes and couldn't drive and didn't have any money to do anything. So I like being an adult, always have. The second thing, and I think the bigger thing for it not being wise to ask this question, is if we believe in God who's sovereign over all, He brought us into being so that we would live in the time that we are living in. And He knew that when we reached mature adulthood, got the hair in the ears and everything, He knew that when we reached mature adulthood, this would be the time that we would be in. And to question that and to say this time ought to be different or ought to be like another time is assuming a level of wisdom that we just don't have. That's a God sized thing. Much better to say, okay, Lord, you've put me in this time at this age. How can I make this time the best for me and the people around me? How can I live in your will and plan so that I'm making this age better? I still think our music was better. May the Lord add His blessing to this reading of His Word.